Hello, Mike. It's great to meet you again after the premiere the other night. So, Bermondsey Tales, Fall of the Roman Empire. For anyone who's not seen it yet or been fortunate to catch it, what's it about?
Well, loosely, it is actually based on my family, and it's based on a collection of true stories. So, my granddad and his business associates, it's about 15 people's stories over the course of 60 years. So, all the little tales and the things that happen are actually true, but to tell them as a narrative would never work. So, the background and the fiction of it and the family is all completely fictional, but the events that happen are worryingly very close to true life. And essentially, it's the I guess the plot is I'm fascinated with the Roman Empire, and I always found it interesting that when the emperor died, if he didn't have a natural successor, there would be infighting. And it's actually the same with a crime family. I mean, when my granddad died, my mum was a lady, and that's rightly or wrongly, you can't work with women. As a rule, there are exceptions. My uncle would have no interest in that side of the world because my granddad didn't want him to be. The same with myself. I was incredibly well. I was only 19, and my granddad wouldn't have wanted that for me either. So it not infighting as such, but what he built slowly dissipated and fell to pieces. And I just always found that quite an interesting narrative. But I wanted to make this a comedy, and I hope that that's what people see. I'm not glorifying villainy. I'm not trying to glorify gangsters. I don't see my family as gangsters, really. I don't think, certainly not the portrayal of them that you often get in films. But growing up, I was always surrounded by laughter and funny stories. So that's what I hope this film is. It's a collection of funny stories that people will laugh at, and hopefully at the end of it, it's not trying to set an agenda or change the world. It's just entertainment, and people that watch it and go, "That was funny," and that's my main goal.
So, you saying all this, I didn't realize this. I mean, I'm almost tempted to ask you, did you have an Uncle Ronnie and an Uncle Reggie? But
No, no, the other side.
I won't ask you that.
Um,
But with all these stories, and there are some really great anecdotal moments in it. But what made you start writing it? Because this is not the first script that you've written and has been made.
yeah, so the first one I wrote, I did a play in the West. So I'm a theatre writer. Um, I don't. I've never wanted to do film. I've always worked in theatre, and the reason that I've worked in theatre is because no one was hiring me as an actor. So my first play was called Worth a Flutter, which is sort of a gritty romantic comedy set in Bermondsey. It's about a summer what happened to me. And then I wrote a play called Time, and I was with a guy called Johnny Clark. I can talk about him now because sadly he passed away. And we watched the Hatton Garden Job, and he went, "That was brilliant, son. That was like a bit of work." And well, they took it from the recordings, the police recordings. That's why it was very accurate. And then, "Why don't you write that?" And I went, "Oh, I do theatre. No one's interested in a gangster theatre play. I mean, it just wouldn't happen." And I've come up with this idea for Time. And then it did really well. It was in the West End, got a UK #1 tour. And then when that fell through because of COVID, and sadly the producer died of COVID, it got turned into a film called The Last Heist, with Terry Stone, and it won a few awards and it did quite well. And I'm immensely grateful for the film, but I didn't direct it, and it was sort of tweaked. And although I'm immensely proud of it, again, that's a collection of stories that I had growing up, more closely to my family than Bermondsey, in all truth. And then I worked with Ray Burdis on a film called Mr. Kiss, which is, again, it's another Ray's a hero of mine. Love on the Bay was my favourite film growing up, and it still is. So we made something that was far more of a comedy. And then when I got the chance to direct, and again, Mr. Kiss is co-written. So this is the first chance I had to write something that no one tweaked it and direct it. So it was my chance to tell this story. So that was sort of how it came about. And I just thought there is a market for gangster films. And I've got a lot of connections to make them. Luckily a lot of the actors were already good friends of mine: Frank Harper, David Shaw, Charlie Clapham, Dan O'Reilly. So it made sense. And then I just thought I want to make something that's a little bit different. I mean, technically, this is a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah.
It's a 5-act play, you know, and it's you know the prologue, the epilogue. Technically, it's a tragedy, but I just wanted to make something that was funny, that's not macho, it's not violent. I've tried to take the violence out wherever possible, or if there is violence in it, I've tried to make it comedy rather than macho. And there's nothing against them films, and I love them films. Um, but I just wanted to make something that's better than the violence. That's the overall aim of it, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make something that when people watch this, and at the end, it's very touching to my family. But if my family's legacy is going to be remembered, I want that to be remembered through laughter. So
Yeah.
that's hopefully my homage to them, so to speak.
So you not only write and have a role in this yourself, you've, as you say, you've directed it as well. Now, my understanding was that you weren't going to be directing this originally. Is that right?
Yes. So originally I was going to direct it, and I was going to play Frank Harper's part. So I was going to. I went, okay. And he went, look, he went, you've got to play the main role. He went, Henry's you. He went, it's your part. He went, you've got to play the lead. So I took on the lead role. And 2 weeks before we started filming, he went, Mike, he went, I can't do it now. So we lost him, the director, and the DOP. And we was already heavily financially invested in this. So it was a case of, do we lose £100,000, which is what we'd spent, or do I direct it? And I've never directed a film. I've directed theatre, but not a film. But I met a fantastic DOP. My first Andrew, like DOP Seb, who's fantastic. The first Andrew is brilliant. So I thought, well, I've got a good team that will look after me. I've got a network of actors that I've already worked with that are friends of mine. They'll look after me. So I sort of literally watched a couple of videos on YouTube on Studio Binder, and that was sort of my education. And it was just a case of blagging it. But I don't. If you've got a good DOP in the first, I don't think it's that difficult a job. I think in the sense of that it's just a collaboration, and that I can do because I've done that in theatre for years. So I actually
Yeah.
felt incredibly comfortable.
Right, Mike, you have also got a really great cast, and it's like a really great cast in this. You know, I mean, the list of great actors is almost endless. You've got Alan Ford, Frank Harper, David Shaw, three actors who really should have a lot more kudos than they ever get. But you've got John Hannah, Vicky Michelle, Vaz Blackwood, Linda Robson, and even sort of Maisie Smith, and obviously Daniel O'Reilly. How did you go about getting such a great cast?
I've been really lucky. I've worked in theatre now for 15 years. So my background is theatre. And over the years, I've worked with a lot of really good people. And I'm quite a prat, for want of a better, for sort of clinging to people and pulling in favours. So when I started this, and I said, look, I'm directing it, and you know, it's my project and that. I went to people like David Shaw, Frank Harper, John Hannah, Charlie Clapham, um, obviously Daniel O'Reilly, all of these, Vicky Michelle, all people that I've worked with before, and Gary Webster. So all of them I messaged and went, look, this is the project. Have a read of the script. Let me know if you're in. And I like with David Shaw, when it's this part or this part, what part do you want? We discussed it, you know. And I was really, really blessed that everyone come back to me. Yeah, we've really enjoyed working with you. We've seen your work as a writer, and we you know, we believe in you as a director. So I was really lucky that all them people come on board. Then when it come to, there was a few parts I couldn't quite cast off of people that I knew. So I went, look, let's put out a spotlight and see who comes through. And I said to the producer, Rowe, I went, for Scats, I went, ideally someone like Alan Ford. I went, and for the part of Chloe, ideally Maisie Smith. But look, chances are we won't get them. Let's see what happens. And then they both come through. So I think we had 16,000 people apply. But as soon as you get your dream casting, you know, so I went straight to Malcolm, who's Alan's agent, and to Inter Talent. Um, and I know Inter Talent really well. I've worked with a lot of their actors before. So I just sent through the script, and they both said, "Yeah, we love the script. They're in." So I was really lucky that the people that I couldn't quite cast were actually my dream casting. Um, but to work with so many people that I've worked with before as a director, it just gave me a bit of a security blanket because I knew what I was getting. I knew there'd be no egos. I knew as a writer how these guys act. I knew as a person how these guys are. So it was a really lovely, lovely thing. I mean, some of the scenes, like particularly the one at the end with Charlie Clapham and David, I've worked with both of them on stage and filmed before.
Yeah.
So I almost directed that as a stage play. And that's what I love to do. So yeah, it was just really, really lucky. And it sort of shows that when people say, oh, first time director, yeah, but it's from 17 years of connections. And it is about making connections, this industry, and it's about
Yeah.
knowing the right people. So yeah, really blessed.
Well, the one, I mean, out of that great cast, the one name that I didn't name in that was Daniel O'Reilly. Now, obviously, Daniel had his issues sort of 10 years or so, more than 10 years ago, which, but he's come through that, which is great because he's really good in this, and he's really, really funny. And there's that one scene, the nightclub scene, which is, maybe I'm escalating this a bit too high. It's a bit like Rashomon in terms of it's the same scene from different directions. And Daniel's great in it. He's so funny in this. And I'm just wondering, was he first choice, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So with Dan, I mean that scene as well. I'll be honest, it's my homage to How I Met Your Mother,
Oh, right.
where
Okay.
you see the story told, and that's how he remembers it, and then you see the story how it actually happened. So I met Dan. His agent Jason Samuels come to see a play of mine called Worth a Flutter, which is going to be my next film. And he said, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. You've got to meet this guy. So I met Dan O'Reilly. I had no idea who Dapper Laughs was, not a clue. And then as I come back, I went, I met this fella Dapper Laughs, and my wife, is it him? And I'm, yeah, well, that's the fella. She went, Mikey's huge, and I genuinely had no idea. And I offered him a part that night in a West End play called Time. And I was chatting to him. I'm doing this play. We've got David Shaw attached. Myself, I went and pulled an Ann. I went, I can't find the guy that can play Fisherman. I went, you're perfect. I went, you're comedy. And I went, and you're lovable. I went, but you've got this arrogance about you, but in a charming way. I went, you're perfect for the part.
Yeah.
And he said, I've not done theatre for years, but obviously he did it. And he was brilliant in the play. He then turned it into a film which became The Last Heist. I then cast him in Mr. Kiss or Gangster's Kiss, which is coming out very shortly. And then with this film, I wrote the part for him. So the scene that you're talking about, I remember writing it, and I messaged him, mate, I've just wrote this scene. I went, it's you. I went, I've literally written it with you in mind. I went, you're gonna be amazing in it. And he was, and so he was definitely first choice. To the point of I wrote it for him. And when I say that, he still brings himself, he brings his own comedy, he brings his own
Yeah.
flair. But me and him have got such a good relationship. And like with my next film, I sent him the script and went, mate, I went, you've got to play this part. And it's actually Worth a Flutter that his agent first saw. I went, mate, you've got to play it. So it's the beauty of knowing people. And rather than making them fit the part, you write the part with them in mind. John Hannell's the other one. I sent him two parts and went, what part do you want? And when he picked his part, I went, right, I went, I'm now going to rewrite it for you. And we made him Scottish and we made him slightly more neurotic than he was, and
Yeah.
more of a comedy. And we gave him this trophy girlfriend, and yeah, it was brilliant. So yeah, it was. I think it's always that, and I think a lot of directors and writers do that. I think they use the same people, and it's because why would you not? When I can write something for Dan, and I know that Dan's going to bring himself and add to it. You know, he adds what I write, he adds 50% too. So yeah, it's just again really blessed to be able to work with these people.
Now, you mentioned this earlier on about how many real life anecdotal incidents are in this. Um, can you sort of hint at which ones do have a truth to them?
Yeah, of course. So every scene and every story is completely true. The one with Frank Harper in the Jewelers, 100% true. The one with the salvia in the nightclub, 100% true. The stories about the cab driver, everything, even the death of um, the character that leads to the start of the infighting. That was my granddad. So everything is true. And it's all worryingly true. The scene again with Vaz Blackwood that happened in I nearly mentioned the pub then, that happened in a pub in South London. So it's all incredibly true, but the narrative isn't, because this is the truth is it's like 60 stories from 30 people over the course of 60 years.
Yeah,
So I've had to thread it all to one story over the course of one family narrative over the course of, well, it's, in theory, it's 30 years, but most of it happens over the course of like 2 weeks. So it is all true. And as much as even the bit with the owl that happened, I can mention that happened in the Simon with a family member up in
nice.
Bermondsey. So it is all true. It's just the context of it isn't quite true. But
Yeah.
the characters' motives behind it are true. It's just, it's been movieized, shall we say?
Okay, excellent. Well, finally, then, Oscar directors and actors this a lot, going off road a little bit with it, going right back, your own personal experience, going back decades, probably. Can you remember the very first film you saw on the big screen?
No, I remember very clearly the films that influenced me growing up. So as a young kid, it would have been like The Great Outdoors with John Candy, Monty Python, I mean Holy Grail, The Young Ones. So I can't remember my exact film, but growing up, it was always irreverent comedy that always sort of that was my earliest influences. As a young, even as a 3 year old, I've just adored The Young Ones. Um, and then as I got older, obviously, Lock, Stock, Long Good Friday, The Sopranos, that sort of thing. So I've been very lucky to work with a lot of people that I idolised growing up. One of my heroes was Gary Webster from Minder. So yeah, so they're sort of my influences, but I can't. I think probably the first film that I would have sat down and watched probably would have been The Holy Grail.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think
That's
yeah, but
that's quite a first film to see as your
yeah, probably when I was about 4 or 5. Which whether you can question whether it's suitable for a kid
that's
at
gonna
that
be
age
a
to watch it.
4-year-old watching Holy Grail. Well, you were 7 or 8 when you watched Life of Brian.
Yeah. I've just always, it was always one of them things that I always grew up around comedy and laughter. I remember even as a young boy, Ben Elton, he did a comedy stand-up thing called The Man from Auntie.
Yeah.
Um, and again, looking back, I was probably too young to watch it, but I remember my mum letting me watch it and going, yeah, but he's laughing in the right places and he gets the humour. So I don't know, maybe that's maybe that's why I've grown up a bit ski with and the way that I am.
That's great. Well, thank you ever so much for your time, Mike. It's really good fun, the film, and I am looking forward to seeing what you come up with next within that genre.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really grateful for your help and support. Really means a lot.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.